Today's a really exciting one. We're going to talk about engaging in community. I have a very, very, very long list of things that we're going to talk about. And then we have some subtopic, like just to kind of keep us on track. But I feel like every single person I'm going to have on this panel is going to have a lot to say. To preface this, I feel like stepping forward, best thing we can do is narrow down our focus into something we have the control of instead of, making our scope too broad and losing the hope and focus. There are so many different ways to involve yourself in one's community. All right, I am still missing a few people in the room, but it's good to see y'all. It's really good to see y'all.
Thank you, likewise.
What's going on?
How's it going?
Good times, man. Real good times. So, engaging in community is kind of a big, broad topic, and there's lots of different directions this can go. But what I'm super excited for is just the ability to kind of open the floor up to conversations that can go any manner of direction. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time and sitting with me. And for the people who are in the audience, I appreciate you guys sitting and listening, tapping the screen, sharing with friends, all the good stuff to help tell the algorithm that this is worthwhile content. So first and foremost, let's just go down the line and introduce ourselves. I'm going to start with you, EmperorAndrew. Come on up.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm just a figure from the internet. Nice to meet you. I'm being silly. We're having a good time. It's a pleasure to see you. Do we want to talk about the community things, or do you how do you want to?
I'm just going to go through and just to have everybody say hi real quick. So we'll go ahead and move on to. We're going to move on to my buddy Lawrence. Hi, buddy. Good to see you.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on, good people? Pleasure to be back in good company again, man. El Naturino from the South Side. Sears Family Farm, Farmfresh 24/7, your hyper-local, decentralized food system hub for the new system, man, and beyond.
Right on, man. I appreciate you being here and giving us some time and space. Deborah, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tripp. I'm super excited. I also have been waiting since the last one we had going on. I did see the other one you had too. Was it last week before? I can't remember. Hi, I'm Reverend Deborah. I'm an interfaith minister, a movement facilitator, and dubbed by the lovely community here on TikTok, the Shenanigan Shaman. And I bring that perspective to community. Yeah.
Right on.
Thank you.
And then Tony, why don't you come on up and introduce yourself to the crowd? Welcome in. Thanks for being here.
As if people didn't expect to see my face.
I was hoping.
Hi, Carolyn. I'm Tony. I am the resident TikTok middle road guy, hence the red and the blue, the Jedi and the Sith. I feel like I'm stuck between. Most of the time, I'm a community organizer. I love to do community events. I'm also a big P politics nerd, so I do keep a close eye on that. And I try to remind everybody that all of your favorite politicians probably have their hand in the cookie jar, which is okay as long as we all get some fucking cookies too. So I'm going to urge people that aren't interested in that stuff to always participate in their local communities, whether that's politically or as a human building tribe.
Word. Good words, my friend. Good words. And then Miss Miranda did just pop in, so we're going to have her up to introduce herself. Hi, my dears. Good to see you.
Hello, hello. Love to see everyone's faces. We got a good group tonight. It's so interesting being on the West Coast and experiencing this in the middle of the day and not late at night. So I'm happy to be here. I'm a farmer's market manager and fresh food advocate, and I really like to prioritize my content about being a local consumer. And that can look like shopping at small businesses or even buying eggs from your neighbor. So I'm excited to speak on what community looks like from a consumer perspective, but also a food systems perspective.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. All right. And there is one more that I'm hoping that will join us in a little bit. I went ahead and resent the invite to them, but we'll go ahead and get started. So, and what I love about this is that we're all coming at it from varied different lanes. I love, because 3 points on my little 20-point list here involve food. So I'm sure we'll be talking quite a bit about that, of course. But there's also stuff like attending festivals, cleanup projects, even things like either forming or helping maintain youth groups. There's a bunch of different ways to involve yourself with the people around you. And so that's kind of the sauce of it all, because it's making friends, it's, building bonds, that's existing in community. And while we do that, we live much more richer lives. We have friends that we may not have made otherwise, that sort of deal. There's just a ton of opportunity in engaging in your community. So right now I'd like to go ahead and just open the floor to whoever would like to speak first. We're just going to keep this kind of open and wide. I did send y'all some sub-talking points I might point back to, but we're all pretty much engaged in the right direction. So who would like to speak first? Anybody? I can keep on vamping until somebody. All right, go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
I'll freaking do it. I've been taking notes here. And I really spent a lot of time with GPT on this. And I kept pressing it. And I'm like, draw parallels between tribalism and community. And I really want you to outline the positives of it. And I want you to not be afraid to outline the negatives of it and when it can slip into dangerous ideologies and groupthink and totalitarianism and all these things. And literally every single talking point that we are going to bring up tonight could slip into the negative aspects of it. We could talk about excluding certain people from food programs. That just sort of happens through the cliquey nature of human beings. It just tends to be how we are if it's left unchecked. It's just something that it keeps redirecting my attention, whether I'm looking at global politics or national politics, state level, all the way down to the interpersonal stuff between even myself. Is accountability. If I say I'm going to do something, I have to then do that thing, and I have to hold myself accountable. And so here's the tricky part: is when we start talking about tribalism and groupthink, before we dig into the very specifics of how we can start engaging with community, I always want to point back to two things: food and music. If we look at, that tribe over there, we tend to lump people together by stereotypes, things we find comedic, or even things that tend to be bigoted and worse, right? And instead, when we say food and music, well, we can talk about the blending of music. And I've talked about this so many times on this channel, how military marches blended with saloon style, stride piano, and started to form jazz. And jazz then branches off to this other form of ragtime and stride to boogie woogie, which leads to more rock and roll. This leads to more jazz. And that blending meant something to people. In Chicago felt different than Mississippi, which felt different than New Orleans, which felt different than St. Louis, which felt different than New York. And when we start talking about those things and we think musically, we're like, oh yeah, the New York jazz sound, or oh yeah, that Dixieland jazz sound of the early 1900s, forgetting that label is representing a group of people. And anthropologically, we look at what were they going through? Who were these people? Who were these flesh and bone people that we're talking about? And so when we start digging into community, something that I always kind of sniff in the air around some people is they start to feel this feels culty. This feels like we need to form cult-like ideas or these dangerous things. And we have to understand that what we're dealing with is human magic, and that can go well. And when it goes well, bellissimo, chef's kiss. The best things that humanity has to offer come when we learn how to balance this very specific thing of how do we allow groupthink with people who think like us and feel stoked about being around those people without letting it devolve and slide into totalitarianism and a negative style of groupthink. So, and literally everything, the chat GPT went down neighborhood watches and how those could fall into slippery territory, mutual aid networks and how those can become exclusionary, environmental, which was really interesting because it's preservation versus livelihood, where preservation efforts start to impede on certain people who depend on that protected land now for their livelihoods. And it's this can slip into exclusionary, dangerous stuff, no matter which avenue we're talking about, no matter which thing. So accountability is always extremely crucial when we talk about tribalism, groupthink, identity, hyper-localization of economies and efforts and things like that. So be aware of it, know that it's a thing, and then we have to navigate it, because again, when we handle this thing correctly, the best things that we've ever accomplished happen because all of us are smarter than any of us. And when we mishandle it, some of the most grotesque and awful, brutal things happen in humanity. So before we really dig into the panel tonight, I wanted to give that disclaimer. So anybody watching in the chat, like, yes, what we are talking about is extremely dangerous. It's a volatile substance. It is human magic. And again, when handled with grace and care and forethought, it is the single most powerful thing on the planet.
I think we should do a round topic. One thing that stood out was mutual aid. Does anyone have, I know when I think of it, like, what can you do today? Mutual aid's what I always go to.
Yeah, no, I can say, and here's what I'll say. There is the kind of idea of the road to hell is littered with men with good intentions. You know, we all want to have these bright and positive, shiny things happen, but if we're not careful and diligent enough and like open-minded to the trap falls that can happen, then yeah, inevitably stuff can go awry, and that is obvious point to keep in the forefront while we build these platforms and these communities to like maintain our maintain the appropriate levels of I keep wanting to say authenticity, but that's not the right word that I'm looking for. But this idea that we hold them accountable, we have these systems set up to where people aren't just going to engage once and then feel satiated. It's something that is going to revolve and have repeat processes to keep them engaged over a long period of time, and so that way, if and when things inevitably change, people will notice. Now, Andrew, I saw you raise your hand. Do you have some words for us?
I have a couple questions. Like, number one, I just want to say I really do appreciate you, Tripp, and you, Tony. I appreciate you both a lot. I don't know the other Farmfresh. I just met you today. I know you followed me and I followed you back. So nice to meet you. I look forward to meeting you and interacting with you as we go forward here. Everybody else, same. Everyone else, both on the panel. Pleased to meet you both. I just don't understand. I think you guys are killing it with what you're doing and trying to organize communities. And Tripp, I think you hit it all right on the head with what you sent to all of us in the email. I know the people in the live with us aren't aware of, not the email, but the message, like they're not aware of what that said, but you could read that 100% and it would totally answer you did all of the thinking for us. So my question is, what are your goals? Like, what are you all trying to do? Are you just trying to like get to be around people? Or that's what I do not understand is like, okay, we're trying to get ourselves to be nice to our neighbors. Everybody go forgive your neighbor that you've been fighting with for a long time. Everybody you got nasty words you said with who lives down the street, go like work that out with them. You know what I mean? It's not, I don't understand why it's hard. You guys are awesome. You're leading the charge. I have another question, but I'll clear for a minute. Well, bring me back.
All right. So to answer this particular question, the goals are big and amalgamous because everybody's feeling a certain different pinch. We're all subject to our own perspectives, and a lot of individualization and atomization has happened. There's a lot of people who don't talk to any of their neighbors around. Like I have a decent relationship with a few people who live in my apartment building, but like I could be a lot better, and like I'm working on that day by day. The idea that we have gotten so far away from, because like a lot of this is like relearning social skills and stuff that we have lost over, whether we want to talk about the pandemic or what have you. Like there's a time when we like social norms slid, and now we're in this space of we don't feel connected to the community in a lot of ways, and like maybe it's different for different regions, but there's a common theme of there's work needed to be done, and some people need to be kind of told that in various different ways until it actually clicks for them that like everybody that you can get a lot more than what you put in to like community things such as like donating your time to do doing a cleanup or like aiding in a festival will inevitably put you in a space where like it's just good for the soul to do these kinds of things. And then like when once you put a foot forward in that, I think a lot of what my personal goals are just inspiring people to do more. I know that right now I'm working with somebody here in my state to put on a volunteer expo in February as a way to kind of get a lot of different places like the Food Bank of the Rockies and a whole bunch of different organizations that are honestly always looking for help, put them in the same spot and make it like somehow attractable for people to come in and like check it out. Like that's one of like the inspirational avenues that can inevitably, you know, maybe do a little bit of good, create some ripple waves, and like every little bit helps. That's where I stand. Anybody else want to answer this question before I give it back to him? Go ahead, Tony.
I love that you asked what the goals are, because the goals, when I was involved in the city that I'm in now as the director of a chamber of commerce, we worked alongside economic development. Economic development corporations in your town or things like it, their job is to make your town appealing to work, live, and play. They want people to move to the town because that's money. If people work there, that means there are job opportunities. If they live there, that means there's good housing and neighborhoods, and play. That means there's fun shit to do. Community concerts, hiking trails, bike trails, downtown nightlife, so on and so on and so on. However, you can hire these very expensive corporate firms to come in and do an entire demographics analysis. They'll send out surveys, they'll send it out in Spanish, they'll send it in Chinese, like depending on and Mandarin, depending on the population. And they gather all these data points and these metrics, and then they develop a 10, 15, or 20-year plan that is going to increase small business, increase tourism, increase nightlife, increase good jobs and affordable housing. It's an entire package deal. But the reason they're so expensive is because it's exhaustive. And the reason that it's exhaustive is because every single town is different. You cannot copy pasta. You can't just copy paste one economic development plan from Minnesota to Miami, from Oregon to Boston, wherever we're talking about it. It just doesn't work like that. So a long time ago, when I started to take my eyes less on geopolitical and big P politics stuff, and I started to see like how much in shambles our local communities were and why they were so important to handle and be the foundation of the big P politics, right? Which is why we can't handle this stuff right now, which is why everybody's like, it's because we're so disconnected from ourselves and one another. So my goal is to continue this conversation and find 7 million different ways to say all the things that we're going to be covering in this thing tonight, because someone from Minnesota might be watching tonight and nothing might hit home. But 7 weeks from now or 12 weeks from now, they might pop back in randomly, and something similar, but said in the right way, by the right face, in the right tone, at the right time of day, at the right point in their life, might actually spur them to go do some of the things we're talking about. And each one of these things has to be like a little petri dish all across the United States, because the more we mesh together our communities in real, wholesome, and supportive ways, the stronger we actually are as a populace, and the more resilient we'll be when it comes to fight those big P and geopolitical battles.
Yep, absolutely. Does anybody else want to talk about goals before? Yeah. All right, go ahead, Miss Deborah.
Again, Andrew, thank you for the question. And I'm probably going to echo a little bit of some of the things that were already said, but I do want to come from the perspective of I am actively using my platform here on TikTok to give people the tools to do whatever the fuck they want to do with community. We don't always have the same goals. And like you're talking about, Tony, every town is different. And so it's not one size fits all. And it's really difficult for us to come up with parameters. Here's how all communities work. One size fits all. Let's just hand those out and tell everybody to go to work. That's the exact same structure that we're in right now, in a culture, in a society, in a paradigm that doesn't allow the individual to find where they really fit, but more so encourages us to kind of kowtow to whatever lines are here. Pick your line. I think of the movie Divergent. If you guys saw it, where everybody's born into this world. Okay, well, synopsis, just briefly. Everybody's born into this world where you are essentially matched with your career based on your genetics and family and all this other stuff. You choose your career, and nobody diverts from it. And there's this one person who eventually, of course, diverts from it and actually qualifies for a bunch of different ones. And it breaks the system because they don't fit in a box. One of the biggest things that we suffer from collectively and individually is the fact that we are all trying to slam ourselves into boxes that were not actually made to be fitted to us. So I think it's
dead on. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I came with all of these fun notes that I wrote, like, okay, what am I brainstorming here? And it's about nonviolent communication. It's quoting M. Scott Peck in A Different Drum, Community Making and Peace. It's talking about the continuum concept by Jane Lee Loth in how we raise our children from prenatal through how we give them expectations, whether we choose to be inclusive or not, how our love is conditional. We live in a paradigm that the parenting system itself has been turned into its own fucking system that we're supposed to follow. We essentially have become so removed. In my lives, I almost always talk about this. It's as if the culture has turned you directly opposite everything that you actually need in favor of them earning money on it. That's how supply and demand works. They supply you with the demand, and then you need it and you keep buying it and whatever. I really want to facilitate communities, whether you want to go off and buy a piece of land and get all your friends and do it that way, or whether you want to stay in your big city and connect with neighbors. We need to know how to communicate nonviolently. We need to know how to be truly so honest with ourselves that we can actually show up authentically. Because if I'm not honest with myself, there's no way I'm going to show up authentically. And I'm going to constantly have problems with showing up in community because I can't show up as me. So I really just feel like we need to focus. Everybody has their own focus, but my perspective is we need to develop the tools. We need to start from right here every single day. And that doesn't mean that you can't build community or can't connect with your community when you're unhealed, because it's a lifetime journey. But community actually supports the journey towards wholeness and self-actualization, and it's an imperative step. And so many of us are so lost and so disconnected from that. To me, it feels like my life's work is to cultivate these tools so that we can honestly show up for it in a way that if my scales are always tipped, my measurement is always going to be off. If I'm out of balance and unwell and confused and lost, my scales are tipped and I can't make good decisions for me or my community.
Word. Great words. Miranda said that they should all get a chance to answer this question. So I'm going to have her come up first. Or next, and then we'll get Lawrence's answer on this question. Goals.
So great way to start us off. And I love this idea about creating enough space for everybody to share. So as these questions come up, giving everybody the opportunity to share, I think would be great. Because I think as people are talking, if they didn't originally have something to say, as great ideas are being shared, you probably have an answer. And when I think about goals and being in community, I think of spheres of influence. And I'm really passionate about the food system because that's where my employment is from. I work at a farmer's market, so I create content about how to shop at a farmer's market, how to be a vendor at a farmer's market. That's economic opportunity. How to prepare food that you get at the farmer's market. That's a skill set that's teaching people, as well as nourishing their body, which can be like mental health and physical health. So as we talk about food being the sphere of influence, yours might be different. I have a sibling and they do not like to garden and they don't like to cook, and her sphere of influence is a lot different than mine, but we both are doing what we can to promote our community. And so my encouragement is find what your sphere of influence is, and then just start with your neighbors. If yours is food, maybe you're inviting your neighbor over for dinner.
Great words. And then Lawrence, what do you have to say about some goals, my friend?
I guess goals for me personally in our community, what we're building is hyperlocal food systems. We feel passionately about the quality of food that we're introducing into our system and to our kids and our community, that our community can have access to. So we've started building intentionally with growers, bakers, and makers in our area. Thus kind of finding the people who feel the same way, who share the same heart space. And I think we're all saying the same thing. Everybody find what you're passionate about, find where your heart is centered, and then go out and find people who are doing the same thing. I think, again, different aspects of what our truth is or what our orientation is, what our path is important. And the more diversity we have, the stronger we become as a community. So our goal is to build community in that respect and then interlocked and interconnect with other people who are building community in their respect. And that's how we create a new system that is, non-oppressive and open for everyone and inclusive.
Word. Very well said, my friend. Andrew, you said you had another question. Why don't you go ahead and what's your next question?
Number one, I want to say you all sound like you're on the right track. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing. We're dealing with like 1 billion degrees of separation right here. So I think that we should all have absolutely no trouble overcoming whatever opposition is out there in this media space that we're all operating in, as long as we all start trying to commit to the same sort of ideas. I want to take 1 second and thank everybody that's with us in the chat. You guys are great. There's so much content you could be consuming out there, and yet you're all hanging out here with us talking about this. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you. I saw you, Spawshi. You're the man. I just wanted to ask. Now, my other question is, this type of community that you're all talking about, I like it. I love it. I'm also scared of it because we live in a world right now where we kind of have to, bomb children overseas so that our kids can go to school. And I get really nervous when I hear anything that sounds like that. Will I be compelled to take part in the community? Will I be forced to help with everything? I mean, I'm the kind of person who does want to help. I want to go out there. If you have a Farmfresh Alliance in my area, I'm going to want to show up for a couple hours to help out for the week. That's the kind of person that I am. And that's the kind of person that I think everybody who you're really speaking to is also trying to be. But I can also, I don't have issues with being social or anything like that myself. I'm quite good at it. So, for myself, I need to be able to be isolated in a way sometimes. I don't want to be compelled to do things because that's the world that we have. So how do we foment a mentality of having people do the right thing because it's the right thing, not because we have to? I do have a third question, but I think that's a good place to stop.
I would love to jump in on this one really quick with a little clarifying statement. And the first is that I'm afraid of nothing. And I think that is because I don't believe we're bombing children to keep our kids to go to school here. We're bombing children because that's big business. And so our first strategy should be divesting from the billionaire class and reinvesting in our local community. I'm not afraid of a single one of my neighbors. And I live in rural Vermont with a high violence rate because there's a lot of gun-related incidences being in a rural area. And I am currently in the 5th largest city in the United States in one of the most impoverished neighborhoods. And I know every single one of my neighbors, and I'm not afraid. And I am in here and taking my money, investing in the rural community and investing in the urban community. I go to a farmer's markets every week. I buy from my neighbors. I babysat my neighbors' kids in both places. And so I am not afraid of anything because I believe in my community.
Right on. I'm going to go ahead and, that's beautiful. That is absolutely a beautiful way to put it. I will say that I don't want to compel anyone to do anything. I don't want to force anything on anyone. That's never been my jive or vibe. But I want to make it so alluring and potentially, I want to get it to a point where it seems like just the cool thing to do, to just get involved and things like that. And I feel like there is some of that, there's this, I constantly use the collective unconscious as kind of a back mold for the idea that many of us are having the same idea at the same time. But community commitments, festivals and stuff seem to be kind of bubbling there. And you're right, there is going to be, like Tony said, there's that potential of, you have that good intention and then it starts sliding off and you can exclude people, or on the other side of that, try and force people into doing, your little club or special activity. Don't want any of that, of course. But I just want to offer off so many options that people are like, you know what? I could do that. It wouldn't be any trouble. That sort of deal. That's kind of where I'm coming from at it. And I don't expect 100% participation 100% of the time. No, you can give 10% on a week and just give me a little bit of your time and attention and do just a ripple of good. And it could look like a million different things just, with the people in your area. That's a little bit of progress. And I think once people start feeling the benefits of it, it's just going to become easier for them to do. So who else would like to come up? Anybody? Yes, go ahead, Tony.
I love this conversation so much. If you can't tell, like I get super excited about this. So what compels people to do anything at all? So I've been a musician all my life. I play dozens of sound makers, right? But what compelled me to sit there for hours a day? I postponed when I got to see boobies, which is like a really big deal to a teenage boy. You know what I mean? And I chose to sit in my room and go ba da 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 for hours and hours and hours and hours, and then go why did I do that? That's not fun. That's not exciting. And it's actually probably similar to what Lawrence, like you got to wake up probably at the crack ass of dawn tomorrow and do a bunch of shit you don't want to do, because that's what we're talking about. So, but what made me want to do it was watching some people who inspired the shit out of me, man. And with my community work, going around the country as a touring musician, you'd end up in freaking Rochester, New York, or you'd end up in Gainesville, Florida, or some pocket of Nashville where like they have the farmers market, but there's also street fairs and there's also this and this and this. And you start to see all these people with these wonderful ideas. And some of them might be a super right-leaning Christian conservative farmer, but they got a good thing going that's not exclusionary, that is like helping people and awesome and bringing people together. And then on the other side, you might have some like far out like hippie witch doctor, like child of the 60s running an apothecary who also is facilitating freaking all the same types of things. And so that is human inspiration. And that's why Tripp and I, even last year, we started using the term receipts. We have to get out and show people what it's like when this stuff works, because when they see it, they'll believe it. And that's the only way. That's like all of us in this chat right now probably to some degree believe in some kind of extraterrestrial being, right? And we've never seen it though. And the government even told us in 2020 that they're real and we didn't even pay attention. But okay, so let's go before then. You can believe it, but then when you see it, it's unequivocal. Like there is no questioning it. So to see a Trumper, and I've experienced this being someone who's thrown music festivals, seeing a conservative blue collar Christian person standing next to a blue haired hippie person who's hula hooping and spinning fire at the thing, and they're both chuckling and nodding their heads and having a good time, and they both had the same bubble guts from the taco food truck. Like it's a shared experience that we all have. And like, that's magic. That's human magic. And we are so severely deprived of it that it leads to gestures vaguely around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Fantastic way to put it. I do want to kind of wrap back to some of the ideals that we have that, like I sent to you guys before, you know, the idea that creating a sense of community can create belonging and things like that, because I think that in essence, showing it and like making it more palatable in an essence, because a lot of people think that it's stuffy, it's boring, it's what our grandparents used to do, that kind of thing. You know, it was before the mighty technological revolution, that kind of deal. But at the same time, like that was like there's hidden good stuff in those things. It's like we talked a lot about like, you know, the church and how like fellowshipping and sharing was a big piece of that, like coming together in community in that third space. You know, there is dogma and kind of like stuff around it, but there is still a compatible idea of you met your people, you talked to them, they knew about you, and like when one of your group had struggles, the rest of you were there for each other. And it's that kind of stuff that you know, inevitably a lot of us feel pretty alone, pretty isolated in a lot of different ways, and it's because, you know, for some of us it's a social anxiety, the idea that I just don't want to be myself in front of people around me because I don't know how they'll take it, that kind of deal. You know, a lot of personal struggle. That's why, you know, it does start with the self and work outwards a lot. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant of the fact that almost everybody, and like maybe not 100%, but like 70% of people are in the same space in their minds. You know, they're socially awkward about themselves as well, and extending that olive branch and being a friend and just being, having the ability to maybe look past a person's minor flaws to see, you know, like all of these things are ways for us to connect greater in spaces and stuff like that. I think that there are so many different aspects to, you know, the social cohesion that can be made in a community that is like has a common cause, like a festival or some such things, are another ways that, you know, we can just, if we experience what we can with each other, then inevitably that will build. Who would like to speak next?
If nobody wants to take that one, there is a question down there that how do we navigate local connection being greater than political alignment? And I think that's
Okay.
That's fantastic, because it leads into what I think a lot of people in the panel. Oh, you didn't have to give me the big box. Well, so let me. I thought of a joke halfway through, and it's like, if we wonder what can align people of different ideologies, whether that's skin color or gender or faith or political alignment, any of these little labels that we like to put on ourselves, think about the old adage when it comes to like dating, which is like the fastest way to someone's heart, whether it's a man, woman, or something in between, is food. It's food. It's always been food. That's why the old ancient saying is breaking bread with people, man, because like we all need it. And I imagine that if you took two people from extreme sides of the political battle that's been going on, and you had them at the barbecue together, and they're both eating Karen's pasta salad, they're not going to be talking about the shit that divides them. They're going to be like, where is Karen? Because this is like crushing right now. This is so good. And like, who is this band and what's going on? And like, man, there's so many other things for us to talk about and be excited about, that like that kind of healing interpersonally is what sets us up for those heavier conversations. Because it's like getting into those heavy conversations with complete strangers, like on the internet especially, like how well has that worked out for us? Like, let's just gesture vaguely around, like whether we want to be like, oh, but it's working and we're getting, not sure that that's functioning well. So as far as to the question of how we navigate it, it's always like, what are the most fundamental commonalities? Like, we like music, we like food, there's just some very broad categories. Start there. And if you have a passion for one of those things, like Lawrence said, like find your niche. I guarantee you somebody near you is also interested in that. And they may not already think like you and align like you or look like you, but you have this thing. And with that shared common goal, that's the seed of human magic.
Looks like, Lawrence, do you have some words?
Yes, please, man. It seemed like he rung my name up anyway, man. So, this is my static. So, basically, that's why I started at the food system. I believe that, even though, again, you want your passions and the thing that pull your heartstrings to be the thing that you do all the time, we all have to eat. We all have to eat. And right now is a perfect time to really take that harder road of being a part of the food system, because the other choice is the trash that we're offered in the grocery store. And then again, we're talking about impacting our hyperlocal economy. And we know that by way of Tea&Transplant, I get this data, you spend in your hyperlocal economy, and your dollar bounces around at least 7 times. So we can impact our neighbors if we spend with our neighbors. So that means you have to be a part of the food system. And why not be a part of it if we all have to eat? Anyway, so again, I started there because the premise of food is, just like Tony said, it's going to bring everybody together. And we are a real life model of that. We're breaking the 4-minute mile already with the food system and diversity within the system and our communities, because we do have the flower children outside with the hula hoops and the fairies on their back, and the thugs being there too, the real players being there. We're all a part of the food system. We're understanding now how important it is, and now we get to sit at this long table and all discuss on what our community looks like, what it needs to look like, what our children need to have instilled in them now. And it brings about those tough conversations so we can start to chip away at those barriers that have been dividing us and find those bridges that connect us. And that's what we've been building. So again, that food system is critical, because right now, more than ever, it's like the theory of the necessary evil. Right now, we're getting spun into each other. We're being forced into a corner where we're needing to rub elbows anyway. So it's like the universe is aligning for us to be in these spaces so we can build something better for the future.
Word. Absolutely great words. Deborah, I saw you had something to add to the conversation. Please do.
I have been chewing on a couple of words for a few minutes here. The pirates are very busy today. So they are absolutely screaming about the fact that from a psychological perspective, from a human brain development perspective, first and foremost, exclusion or inclusion is first. Recognition of similarities is first. The brain proves itself right again and again and again. It looks for ways that we are similar, same, not differences. So the exclusionary and difference seeking stuff is taught to us, is given to us. And in fact, we can go even further back in psychology and look at the way that modern marketing actually uses the tenets of Freud's early work that he later worked through and moved on from, but essentially gives a short circuit to media and stuff like that, and any messaging, to short circuit our prefrontal cortex and get us into the animal brain. And when we do that, we are no longer thinking clearly, and you can interject as much exclusionary difference. Look how different, look how divisive, look how divisive. The reality is we are inclined to be in community. We are inclined to support each other. And the idea that humans are naturally volatile or violent or divisive is complete and total bullshit. It has been proven otherwise. And the current narrative likes to keep telling you that, and likes to keep sending the message of, oh, you should be a lone wolf. That's cool. That's different. That's whatever, your natural state is to be included in community. And the reason so many people, I think, are really suffering right now is because there is a deep-seated physiological, cognitive, evolutionary expectation that we will have community and support systems. And we've been living in a world that has been taking us out of those, systematically taking us out of those. So I just want to reiterate that. The pirates are screaming about that. This is really important. It is our natural state to be connected. It is our natural state to find things that are similar. So, okay. Thank you.
Word. I love that. Absolutely. You're right. We are social creatures. That is something that, we can talk about from a scientific standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, from many, many different perspectives. And in that, I feel like sometimes some of the programming does go kind of against that in a way where it's just kind of like, no, you can, the everyman, the jack of all trades, that you can do the lone wolf, that whole shtick is sometimes alluring. I'm not going to lie. There's been times when I've been, it takes me 45 minutes to walk to work. This was several years ago. I would just, some people call it maladaptive daydreaming. It didn't really hurt anything, but I would think of myself as a lone wolf after the apocalypse kind of thing. And looking back on that 6 years now, it's silly to think that, because we are communal creatures. But there's a fantasy, there's a narrative being pushed in our media that kind of gives us the illusion that you could survive on your own after it all goes to shit. But that sort of deal. When in actuality that's incredibly harmful for people to continuously kind of think long term, because then they end up isolating themselves because they think that they can just do it all on their own. And whether that be what the almighty powerful they want us to do, or if it's just systematic and kind of the aftermath of kind of feeding the wrong wolf with too much dystopian content, whether it is or what have you, we've gotten in that position where that's kind of a little bit a part of what we're fighting against. It's just the idea of no, you do belong in community, and giving people a space to feel belonging, and that can go a long way for mental health as well. So just it's from the inner to the outer, and connections of neighbors. It's a great thing. I don't know. Andrew, you said you had another question.
Yeah, but I've since forgotten it. You all said such great, very, very intelligent things. I think you hit. I didn't mean to imply that you were afraid, T. I didn't put that on you. I wasn't. I
learn this about me as we interact more. I have a flair for the dramatic.
Okay.
So don't take it personal.
Me too, I want to say. I do as well. I don't think anybody will accuse me of not. So, one thing I have to say is I think we have two things. I have two things real quick, and they're going to be short. One is I think we need to identify that our mentality in our society right now is very divisive. Like you said, you can't think of a person by a political association right now. You really can't. Because if you do that, you're putting yourself in the wrong kind of groupthink. You know, that is absolutely true. We're all the same, and it's us versus like the corporatized business class. It's not really nobody on our level down here with all of us poors. Hey, you know, like all of us, we're not fighting with each other. We're the ones who don't want the problems. We're the ones who've been put through the meat grinder so much that community brain woke up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I absolutely agree with your point there. But so like they're off trying to get us all to fight wars at the moment. And we're all just like, why would we do that? Like, why, what are we trying to do that? Like, they've destroyed our own inherent sense of nationalism for ourselves, I think. Like the nation being the first thing, which don't get me wrong. I love America. I'm one of those people who really does think that we have like so much opportunity here. Like, and I know that hasn't been applied adequately for all groups across the board, and I recognize that, and I think there are things that we need to work on in that area. But like, I know the rest of the world is not like it is here. Like everywhere, right? Everywhere.
Can we talk on that subject, that idea of nationalism and what that plays into community and how it actually degrades community? Someone in the chat wrote earlier, how do we need to start looking at things as cults, and the way to build community is to break down cult mentalities. And one of the structures of whether we want to say cult or we want to say white supremacy is nationalism. And so for a lot of people, like, I grew up in post 9/11 America. I understand where these national sentiments come from, but in a way it was used to have us and to be more divisive and be internalized, when in reality, none of these borders matter. And if we want to tie it back to a food system thing, I'm having my own little journey with it, because I'm like shop local, but I love maple syrup. So how am I going to be in the Southwest and shop local for maple syrup? I can't. There has to be this trade that we do with other things, which hits on what Tony was saying in tribalism.
Well, I definitely think we need to focus on local food. Like, that's the biggest, like, if we can solve that problem for ourselves, like as far as our real communities go, we need to solve that everybody is working for the food from the area, feeding the area, because that's where all of our, like, it would be so cheap. It would be so abundant. We would have so much food, we wouldn't know what to do with it. No one would starve. But the trouble is we've allowed the trade to take us over. We've allowed ourselves to get food. Well, the potatoes from here are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Why are we shipping them there and then sending them somewhere else? Like, if we can tackle that, I do agree, that's probably the biggest thing we should all focus on, is getting your farms local. And then it's nice. Hey, they got those other things. Now you've got stuff to trade with, you know, like that's doable. But we also don't need the corrupt corporate elite to do that. We are in our area. Like, I think we need to get rid of our ideas of make the wealthy pay more taxes. Who cares? We need our communities to take care of themselves. I don't care if they have all the money in the world. It does not matter. They are irrelevant because they haven't given it to us already. They could have this whole time. They didn't. So we don't need them. Go for it, Tony. I see you raising.
Hold on. Before he goes, I just really quickly wanted to kind of piggyback on a point. You're right. I think that there's a give and take to that. We've been satiated in our creature comforts for far too long about this idea that we can get anything from anywhere, and our like food diets are not seasonal anymore, and a whole bunch of things that have kind of broken down because like American consumerism, and like changing that is a big mountain to climb on its own, because a lot of people are like really deeply ingrained and don't really recognize what is actually on the horizon. But that is part of the work. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tony, and I am going to bring up Spawshi for a little bit.
Tony, can I say one thing real quick? Just real quick. I'm so sorry.
Wait, no, don't be sorry.
All right, thank you. I don't mean to cut you off, but the thing, what you just said, Tripp, you hit it right on the head. They're about to make big, massive changes to our monetary system right now. It's about to happen. I don't know how to convince that of you. I think I see you nodding. I think you all agree. So they're about to make huge, massive changes to our monetary system right now. And when they do that, all we have to do is say, look, I get it. You came up with all of that stuff. We're going to just use pennies. We'll just use pennies. We've got those. We don't, the digital currency and all of that, we'll use pennies, and 1,000,000 pennies equals an ounce of gold, and that's it. You know, like, we just have to reject whatever world that they're about to feed you, because they're about to feed you one hard. And that's all you got to do is say no, and they can't kill all of us.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel you. Go ahead, Tony, and then we'll bring Spawshi up.
I just wanted to hop back a few steps to when we're talking about tribalism, cultism, nationalism, and all these things. Again, for anybody just joining us, I did an extensive conversation with ChatGPT today to outline the positives and negatives of what and the parallels between community, groupthink, tribalism, and all these things. So real quickly, community is shared goals, mutual aid, and enact change. Those were like the three big goals, right? And community can be defined by a strong sense of identity, solidarity, and purpose that transcends individual interests. And then it gave examples of how we can participate in community building. Neighborhood watches, the positives and negatives of these are safety versus vigilantism, right? You can get some people who become very dedicated to the neighborhood watch in a negative way. Same with mutual aid, solidarity versus marginalization. Is everybody included in this mutual aid network? Who's participated? Who's built it? What are the stipulations? Does it become elitist? Environmental, preservation versus livelihood. Okay, we protected the land, the watershed's clean and all these things, but what about the people whose livelihood depended on it? Right? And now have we marginalized them? These are just potential positives and negatives. So what we're talking about here really boils down to handling the responsibility correctly. And how do we do that? From handling my own individual responsibility as a person to eat right, sleep right, do some sort of physical exercise, do some inner work, have interpersonal relationships, take care of my daughter, my friends, my family, and then outward to my community, all the way up to our presidents and attorney generals and senators and all these people. It's like we have a responsibility to make sure that this doesn't veer off, and it's nobody else's responsibility but ours, all the way down the chain. Me, even when I'm talking about holding Donald Trump accountable, I'm not going to ask any of you to hold a new like, what do you mean? I just have to be out here saying what I need to say and putting the things out there, holding them accountable in the ways I know how. Even if it means going to DC and generating calls and standing there for freaking 12 hours. Okay, sure, there's that. But then all the way back down to me and making sure that I can handle myself appropriately. There is no escaping labeling some sort of political movement as culty, as groupthink. There's just no way around it, because you could label it that way if someone so desired. If you don't believe me, just do a quick Google search of COINTELPRO. I'll finish there.
All right, and then Spawshi said that he had something he wanted to say, so I brought him up. Hi, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Love the background.
Yeah, this is Meow Wolf. I was having a discussion a few days ago about blending reality environments and what Meow Wolf might represent. And in software, in the space of language development, something that I noticed that is hard to translate across a lot of people at the same time, especially ethically. And this is something that is hard to summarize for a lot of people. Many people across the world want there to be a sudden shift in understanding. And the kinds of things that change our understanding very suddenly as humans, the times that I remember are the times that I've been, for example, I've lost housing, I've been assaulted, I've lost friendships, so on and so forth. And so the times that I recognize that my reality has suddenly shifted are traumatic. And a lot of people casually want there to be a sudden shift in understanding. And all of the times that I recognize that my reality has suddenly shifted have been traumatic. Then I recognize, like, looking back at the stuff that I thought 9 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. Like the developmental markers, a human's developmental marker worth of time, where you can look at specifically when I was 9 years old and 9 years ago, I can use those as markers. I have 3 of those now. And I'm thinking about that because I moved states. I moved from Illinois to California to Illinois when I was 5 and when I was 9. So those were very significantly developmental times in terms of transitioning into elementary and then transitioning out of elementary and then contextualizing the reality of the world. So reflecting on my experiences and the ways that and I don't know how to describe it I don't know who to describe it to. I go live and I talk about the stuff that I do, and I talk about it very often. So it's hard for me to figure out where to summarize, because a lot of the people who I'm on live with, or a lot of the people who I see, the panel basically knows who I am. We've had conversations, and I don't know if it's productive for me to take up the space right now. But in terms of cryptocurrency and electrical engineering and sudden changes and gradual shifts and relationships between digital and analog signals, in electrical engineering, there's digital signal processing and analog signal processing. There is discussion about how to convert from analog signals, which might be more human, might be more wooden, and might be less metal, and digital signals, which might be more immediate. There's more of a strict binary, so on and so forth. And so pulse width modulation, I know that Tripp is going to have a recording of this, so I'm kind of just like throwing stuff out there. But pulse width modulation is a concept that describes how we use LEDs, which have binary signals, to describe analog signals, which are more waveformy. And so when there is an LED that is dimmer than other LEDs, in some systems that's using pulse width modulation, which simulates dimness by having a longer period of off. And because of the ways that the frame rate is generated, the waveform exists, it's faster than our eyes can perceive those oscillations. So part of the electrical component design of our country is dependent on an oscillation between things that make sense, things that literally don't make sense. And the entrepreneurship drive comes from the gap between theory, where we're teaching people these are the things that are possible to imagine, and we don't know where they fit. We are not at the space where we can describe this. My marriage is falling apart. I'm an elementary school teacher, and I'm pissed off because somebody vomited in my backpack. Like, that kind of stuff is the framing of our society. And we hope that these people have the memory of some science lesson that describes sometimes things have processes. So sometimes they can imagine making a box cake at the right time, so they aren't seen as fully incompetent by their partner in 30 years. And that kind of stuff is like, okay, I remember that it's possible to put these things together, and it's important because whatever, like that kind of propagation is hard to value. And describing it as, oh, okay, what if there's this cryptocurrency and suddenly I saw on Facebook Marketplace, somebody sold all of their bottle caps. And the symbol that another person can take from that is maybe I should drink less, and then so on and so forth. And so cryptocurrency as a crystallization of value is where I'm going to leave.
I appreciate that, Spawshi, and I think that I can. I didn't want you to leave, man. I think I could actually kind of point this in a certain direction, because you're right about a few variables in the fact that we don't want these changes to feel traumatic, but inevitably they do. And in a lot of ways, there can be moments of tension when engaging in community that can feel not necessarily like hardcore traumatic like some things, but like there is a sense of give and take, of push and pull. And to some of us, that will inevitably feel like crossing maybe a boundary we have set for ourselves in society, or in some aspect make us, more uncomfortable than we should be. Like the idea of striving for middle ground, honestly, a lot of people reflexively don't feel like that is a way to go. I see you, Tony. I'll come up next. There's not a reflexive way to go in the idea of, the give and take of community commitment. Like, if we're working with people who don't see eye to eye with us, but like they live, like if we're trying to commit to a common goal, but we have that tension and argument in the basis of those goals, then we end up encountering spaces where there are challenges, there is, back and forth, and that can inevitably, and I believe that if enough conversation is had in that group, then the most effective way forward will be addressed and maintained. But I also feel like there's a chance that when there's that gruff part of engaging in community where, sometimes there's things we do not fully like. We don't enjoy them. We don't like participating in this fashion. And it's not a level of coercion to do so, but it is something that, inevitably elbow grease is needed. You're going to need to roll up your sleeves and get to work in some aspect. And that can be a challenge to oneself, but pulling through that is always sort of a way to, I don't know, there's the idea of personal growth in that as well as community growth. Tony, go ahead and come on up.
If you're still here, Spawshi, I love you, dude.
Yeah, that was genius what he just said. The depth of the genius that he just shared with us was immense. Oh my gosh.
Like
every time he's in, he drops just so much gold.
It started last fall, and I remember I was in the basement of my old house, and I remember the moment like Spawshi's language clicked with me, and I was like, oh, you're one of the smartest people I've ever met. This is great. Okay. So I'm going to try to balance things that Spawshi just said with what Tripp came in and said and what you guys in the chat have been talking about. We're talking about what to do this is a class war. Everybody knows this. It's not left and right. It's up and down. And there's a whole bunch of rhetoric around this. Tripp mentions that there's going to be aspects to community that we don't like and so on and so on. And let me just give you a piece of wisdom that was given to me. I don't even remember by who. I remember I was complaining about the situation. It might have been I don't know if it was my history professor or my political science professor. But I was griping. I was a starry-eyed idealist. Again, I'm a musician. I'm a dreamer. I live in imagination land. That's where all my shit comes from, man. I have to spend most of my life there. And it was even worse when I was in my 20s. And the professor looked at me and said, the chess pieces are what they are. Right now, what move are you going to make? And so a lot of people in this panel probably watched earlier this summer as I was like pretty much fully on the RFK Jr. train before he joined up with Trump's team. Why is that? Well, you can rewind back to 2016 and 2012 when I was totally on with Bernie Sanders. Why? Well, I was also on with Ron Paul. Why? I was also on with Ross Perot. Why? The anti-establishment populist rhetoric always gets undermined in every single election ever. Except for maybe like once, and I can't even remember the trivia around that, okay? The chess pieces are what they are. So knowing that we are in this situation and as starry-eyed and as imagination as I can get with what I wish the system would be, and we could sit here and do that all night long. Military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical complex, energy, agriculture, all like, it's overwhelming. And we can sit there and talk about it all night, but the chess pieces are what they are. So RFK for me was a useful chess move. It's like the more people that see him talking about exactly this, the more people will enter into the anti-establishment populist conversation, which always should lead us more towards community activism. Because if the big corporate teat goes away, and not only can the politicians not suckle upon it, but we can't either. Jeff Bezos can't drone me all of my basic necessities anymore. Well, then where am I going to get it? Where am I going to go? What's the alternative? Like, this is why, to me, like, whether you're a communist, socialist, an anarchist, minarchist, libertarian, it doesn't matter. Like, all those things delve into anti-establishmentarianism, which is the fundamental premise through which the rest of this entire conversation happens. Because if we get rid of corporate oligarchies and do campaign finance reform, clean up Washington, D.C., and get non-incumbents and independents and the average person in there, and corporate daddy, mommy goes away, where do we get our shit? We get it from each other. And if we haven't built the systems in the meantime to do it, then it's never going to happen. And in fact, it'll only get worse. Just wait till AI is fucking. Wait till we're in the nursing home, man. And you got a fucking Tesla robot wiping your ass. Having a full-blown conversation and knows everything about you. Even knows that, like, I'm a fan of Barry Harris jazz piano. Okay, it's like, Wait for it, man. If we don't do this now, left, right, gay, straight, all that, if we don't do it now, then we are doing the future generations a great disservice and making the future even way more difficult. So that's a roundabout way of saying, yes, we can have imagination, but we do have to pull it back down and say, like, the pawns are the pawns and the rooks are the rooks and the bishop is the chess pieces are what they are. And unless you want to shake up the snow globe of revolution and bust out the muskets, which I don't recommend, this is the only way.
I mean, I'm gonna keep on Emperor. I'm gonna just keep on plugging, trying my best. I'm gonna keep going.
All right, so I'm going to take a moment to say we've crossed the hour mark, and what a conversation this has been so far. I absolutely love and appreciate every single person who has sat up in the box with us to share their perspective. We're still going to keep on going. We got about another hour or so left, about 30 minutes or so until we hit last words. So just a fair warning to that. I want to really quickly, just for the heck of it, go down these 20 lists of points just real quick to give some people some ideas. Because it's rather vast. And like I said at the stop, like there's multiple food ones, there's multiple different things, but like listen, think about it, see what maybe spark your interest, and we'll continue the conversation after this. Thank you all for the gifts. I really appreciate that. So, number one, the tops are kind of obvious. Volunteer at local charities and nonprofits, attend town hall meetings and join community boards, participating in community event festivals, cleanups, and fundraisers, joining local sports teams, books clubs, and other hobby groups. There is mentoring or tutoring children, the idea of youth programs in general, baseball, art, that kind of deal. Organizing community gardens and farmers markets. Starting a neighborhood watch and safety patrol. We did touch on that, and you're right, Tony. That one especially can get really out of hand really quickly. Volunteer at animal shelters or other rescue organizations. Offer your skills pro bono to community projects. This is a great way to sharpen your own skill set. You can donate things like food, clothing, your blood, other necessities for those in need. Offer transportation services to seniors or people with disabilities. Fostering online communities, because not just the people like in our towns and stuff, but like an online book club and stuff can go a lot farther for those who are socially anxiety, and they can be made of people in your area. Like, just those people who have a problem, that's some options for you. And then, fostering, providing language translation services, or, just getting involved in sections with people who are coming to this great space of America, because it still is in many parts of the world seen as the land of opportunity. Being able to make connections to people who are just coming into the space is another great way to do so. And that's just a few. I didn't read every single one of them for line verbatim, but there's a wide spectrum of different ways we can connect. And I'm sure that there's even more out there that I hadn't thought of before now. So thank you again for being here, guys. Thanks for everybody who's sitting in the chat and watching, and all the comments and all the likes and shares. I see you. I appreciate you all so very, very much. Thank you for coming and having this conversation with us. Who would like to speak next?
So for the next hour, I just have a few suggestions as we move back and forth, because there's quite a lot of us on here. This should be like pickleball, right? Short bursts. So if you keep your answer to like 30 to 60 seconds and then allow someone else to respond, and if you're an oversharer like I am, I always like to use the rule of 3 before me. So those were just some hints and tips I wanted to throw out there for the next conversation. And I've seen Lawrence snapping and would love to hear what he has to say next.
We got to call me out.
I agree.
Yeah, you know what? I appreciate the long-windedness sometimes, because it fills in the gap for me, because I'm not too much of a talker. I'm not social media savvy. I was thrust into this position by necessity. And to be honest, man, I really just want to cut down to the chase, man. We all are saying, again, the same thing. We are even saying to this point of the conversation, if everything fails, what are we going to do? Where's our food coming from? Where are our items coming from? We already have a game plan in place. We all do. We all have something to do right now that has to do with the food system. Whether you don't have land access, it's still foraging. You can still forage for a lot. A lot of our medicines are right outside. A lot of the things people make 6-figure jobs on with mushrooms and things that you forage, they're right outside. The solutions are right there, literally right outside. And I'm just saying my observations, again, have brought me to this conclusion. If we can sustain ourselves, we can then build on top of that anywhere we want to go. We can stretch out anywhere. And again, it's just about getting active. Not always say is you is or is you ain't. We can talk about this all day, but if it stays in talk mode and nobody goes outside and does anything, we're here again the next talk. And to be honest, I don't like to be in the same place twice. I'm a mover. I really got big old boots on. I like to step some. So again, we made an app called Farmfresh 24/7. It's free to download on Apple and Google stores. And this is a shameless plug because this is further to double down on our resolve. We put money behind it. We ain't just putting puff in air. We put money behind life savings behind it. Farmfresh 24/7, free to download on Apple and Google stores. It's nationwide. It can be worldwide with the snap of a finger. It is hyper locality. We are saying we have the tool now to find the people in our areas to buy directly from. We don't have to wish about it. We don't have to talk. We don't have to do any train follows anymore. Just find the people in your area that grow, bake, or make. They don't have to be farmers. It could be that old lady who makes biscuits or that young lady who makes bread now because she's trying to make her way through college and she's looking for a new path in life. We can start to dump that money and our energy into each other. The solution is there. We have to start with food. It's just the pieces are the pieces. In the words of my partner, Tony, the pieces are the pieces. Are you a rook, a pawn, a knight? Pick your one, but we know the food system is critical. Food system is the queen. We gotta have, or the king. The game is based on it's sustainability. So we can't go anywhere unless that king is on the board. The game is over. That's the food system. We have to start there. It's right outside. Again, I say, and I'm gonna wrap this up because I'm not gonna be long-winded either. Look in your cupboard, look in your cabinet, look in your refrigerator, find items that you buy on a weekly or monthly basis. Find a way to then go out, take 5 of those items and find a way to go out and find them in your community. After you find the 5, you can start getting to a rhythm of building relationships with those people. And then you start to internalize how you can maybe even make something so you can go back and give them, whether it's lip chap, a hygiene item, a soap. These are things that don't take a lot of time nor bandwidth to learn. And we can do it. Again, I'm really like, this is a passionate conversation, but we got to move it from conversing to action. And again, that action-based strategy is that the food system is an entryway that you only have to lift your foot up to go across. You can slide. It has no barrier. We can all do it. We can all start saving seeds. We can do something to impact our local economy. And Farmfresh is a way that we believe we can do it. Decentralized, ethically sourced, and again, pouring back into that community, man. But that's it, man. I'm off of it.
I love it. I love it, man. I will say that I love the fact that you immediately pivot to actionable things. Like, you're right. We do actually have to like get off of, this isn't, I try my best not to just do armchair activism. You know what I mean? Like, because since I heard the term, I've been terrified. I've been like, yeah, right, I'm just a big thinker or whatever, and I'm like, no action or whatever. So like, I've done a couple of shifts at like Food Bank of the Rockies. Don't get me wrong, I could do a lot more, but like, I'm trying to be there any chance that I can get. And it's a whole process, man. It does make some effective like perspective change in order to get there. Deborah, you look like you might have something to say. Yes.
Always. I'm an oversharer. Hi. But in terms of actionable things, I wanted to offer up 2 things. One, I want to offer up what M. Scott Peck, and I want to title these books really quick because these are things that I read over the years that I found really insightful and really important. So I mentioned The Continuum Concept by Jane Liedloff, and this is, I'll be brief. She's a sociologist who studied a tribe, I think, in South America, and they have a very different way of raising their children and communicating with each other and connecting in community. And it was so obvious that she had to study them. So that's one that's really important to start from, like, ground up, how we raise our children. M. Scott Peck writes Community Making and Peace, a Different Drum, it's called. And in there are some really amazing tenets about how community ideally reaches consensus. Now, obviously that's really hard on a larger level because he talks about like how that kind of caps out at 100 people. So the idea of breaking things down into 100 people groups sort of deal to try to find consensus and then find consensus in those groups is a really interesting structure to look at. I don't know if it's the end all be all or really the solution for global stuff, but it's an interesting resource. And I want to point out that something really important that he talks about, because I think he has a really clear head about it's not just a linear process. There's not one size fits all, and it's not going to tick in the same direction all day long. He specifically points out that there's 4 stages. That first stage is called pseudo community. And that's when everybody shows up, kind of where some of us are at, or some people in the chat, or where we've all been at some point, where we show up with all the good intentions, big open hearts, open hands, ready to fucking work. And then the reality dawns on us that there are different personalities and different perspectives and different skill sets. And some of us overcommit ourselves and don't show up for our commitments. And that's where the chaos ensues. Pseudo community, then chaos happens. But that chaos is the same thing as a wildfire, the same thing as a fever. It's a reordering so that we can take responsibility. That third part is a really important part. He calls it emptiness. Because I am empty of ego. I am empty of my preconceived notions and my biases and my judgments. And I am empty at the table with open hands, really ready to build from an authentic, vulnerable, honest place. And only then do we actually start to cultivate true community. So as we all want to get involved in all these ways, I don't want to discourage anybody. Go get involved in all the ways, but don't expect that it's going to be all rainbows and butterflies all day long. You are very likely to step in one direction and step back, and step in one direction and step back. You might join a fucking great nonprofit only to find out you don't get along with those people, and for some reason that shit ain't clicking anymore, and you work on another project. It's just to be aware of the fact that that is a well-known process that we need to be prepared for and ready to show up for. And the only other thing I want to offer, and then I'll actually quiet down for the rest of it, is that for us to truly maintain that true community piece, I think we have to get outside of our boxes in terms of like not just conflict resolution, but the way we see ourselves, the way we talk about ourselves, the way we conceptualize so much about the world. I think it's a major overhaul of the way that we see the world and the way we interact with it. And one of the most powerful things that I personally have experienced in community and in both business and personal and otherwise settings, in a lot of settings, I've seen this work. This is simply a practice for conflict resolution, and we just call it circle up. This is the idea that if there is conflict between 2 people, 4 people, or whatever, whoever, doesn't matter what the conflict is or who's in conflict. It is not about excluding the conflict and hiding the conflict. It is about bringing everyone into the table so we can all sit together. And yeah, sometimes this is obnoxious. There's 20 people in a group and 2 people are arguing, so all 20 of us got to fucking sit down in a circle. Guess what it does? It encourages everybody to start really actively working on conflict resolution before we have to get to the circle, and also engaging together when we get to the circle and being willing to participate in that process rather than pushing it out and saying, oh, conflict's not happening. So making space for that conflict to happen is a shift in our perspective. So.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Miranda, you had some words to come up with.
As a former educator, I just want to say that conflict resolution is a priority for sure. And I've seen it at the larger group of 25 10-year-olds because I taught computer science to 5th graders for 1 year, and it was the hardest freaking year of my life. And the only way I could get in control of that group was to sit us all in a circle and directly address the conflict. And now we're seeing it at a more poignant time as well when we are talking about political divides after the election. Everybody's like, divest from the Republicans, but really we should be reinvesting in those relationships so they don't internalize and turn their backs on us. So what this looks like is the one-on-one, the 2-on-2 conflict resolution. I'll give you an example that I had today. I was going to a local nursery to pick up some plants that I'm putting in a front space. And driving out to the car, the man helped me put my soil in. I did not need help. He just decided to do that. that's neither here nor there. And he said, oh, you're from Vermont. You have Vermont plates. And we talk about it. And he said, I'm looking for a place that's just different from here, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to deal with Arizona. Arizona's a red state. And then we start talking, and I'm like, have you tried local communities? There's great local communities where you can afford it. And he's like, I don't go south of Tucson. And I was like, great, because people, it's really community oriented. Everything you hear about the border is not true. It's manufactured by the media. I know, I lived down there for 25 years. And unless you hate brown people, it's completely safe. And I said that out loud because that is really what is happening is racism. And we've ignored racism for too long that allowed 70 million people allegedly to vote this way. And so when we talk about conflict, we have to have conflict in tiny bursts in a safe one-on-one way so people know that it's not okay, because that's how fascism wins. So conflict resolution is a key piece to that. And one of my mutuals here, Plantastic, said trauma informed. I didn't come out attacking this guy saying, hey, you are a freaking racist. I said, hey, actually all of the things you're hearing in the media is not true. I live down there. My parents live down there, and I currently don't live there, but I can tell you from experience, this is what's going on. What you see on CNN News is not true. And he's only 300 miles away from that space and has never experienced it.
Yeah, in fact, I could also say something very similar to that effect, because I live in Aurora, Colorado, and I will tell you that all of the things that popped off, what was it, October, I believe, all of the gang violence, blah, 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 all overblown. That clip wasn't even from that apartment complex. And really, it was negligence on the part of the owner who lives in another state, and 3 of his buildings have been condemned. So he pointed the scapegoat, and then that made the media sensationalism. And I will tell you that I had, family members and friends from all over be like, are you okay? Do you need to leave? It is not that bad, guys. It is really, honestly, not that bad. And that kind of sensationalism gets played into a lot because hate, fear, and anger are right at the top, right at the surface, all the time. Whereas hope and, inspiring the good in people is it's like treating wet wood to burn. You've got to do more to it in order to actually get it there. You know what I'm saying? At least that's an idea I've had about it recently. Go ahead, Andrew. Come on up.
I think that was a good point, T, that you were making. And to hop on the end of what you were saying there, Tripp. I think a big part of our problem with community is we're kind of not okay with people thinking things or saying things or doing things that we find reprehensible. And most of the conflict exists because people are going to do stuff that you find reprehensible. And that's offensive to you in some way or some capacity. But at the end of the day, is it the end of the world if they're like that? So we spend more time fighting about them, stopping them from being bad people or whatever, but we don't have to associate with them. There is an element of that in community, which is to say they can still be in it, even though I don't really like them. I don't really need to like them. I don't care what he said, as long as he shows up to the farm to work on this stuff for a little while. That's fine. He can be like that. It's not the end of the world, sure, people are garbage sometimes. It's not going to hurt me. It's not. And because of that, I've started really thinking about things. One of the jokes that I have on my channel is that I have the imperial mind, I think, with all of the minds of all of the emperors that ever empered ever. So they're all shouting around in here, apparently, as far as my channel is concerned. But one of those things is they're They murdered each other in the streets. The Romans murdered each other in the streets. You know what I'm saying? We're not doing that for the most part. Some people are doing some crappy stuff sometimes. Absolutely. And they deserve to be condemned for what they've done. Obviously. But that's on them individually. We're not to the point that we're offing each other in the streets. And I don't think we're going to get there. I think that if there was really a chance of the people of the United States doing that, it would have happened already. We all had the opportunity, and we passed. because we know that we're not the machine. We're not what the machine would lead us to believe. We're just not that. Some people say some crappy stuff. Some people do some crappy stuff. Some people want to put crappy stuff that they want to do onto you. And those ones are really the only ones that are bad. Everybody else, they're just who they are. Maybe they'll grow. Like you said, Tripp. Maybe the wet wood just needs a little bit more before it'll burn. And if we get so upset that they're saying or doing or things that are reprehensible, they may never be saved from being like themselves, so it's a struggle because it's hard, because people definitely don't make it easy. We all know.
Yeah.
But let's all keep plugging, I guess. Thanks for letting me say that. I appreciate it.
Word. I'm going to come up real quick and just say, yes, you're absolutely, the sentiment there is true. And it's little by little, man. Cause like my dad used to tell me, when you had enough, build a bigger table, not a taller fence. And like, I see that in a couple different ways, just in giving that space to have more community, but also like, I'm not in the business of building walls at all, because like the people on the other side are still people. And like, I feel like even if their perspective is like so diametrically opposed to me that it seems almost maybe dangerous, I still feel like there's a person, when we're talking about perspectives. I know Tony used to say something along the fact of like, imagine him as an 8-year-old kid, and like, how scared that little 8-year-old kid, and every decision that got him to where his perspective is dichotomous to mine. I probably do that a little bit too much with every single person in my life. Probably go a little bit too like drilled in and whatnot. I'm really going to have, really quickly going to have Lawrence come up and say some final words in case we lose him, because his battery power is failing us. We're not quite to last words yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Just in case, I appreciate being on the panel, having the opportunity again, Tripp. This is amazing. It is necessary. I didn't want to discourage. This is necessary context. But again, just my final words to get active. Goddamn, get active. Please get active. And if you think that our food system needs reform, and you think that we shouldn't have to be forced with these, to have these as options, things that are directly related to our illness and ailments. Again, the food system is right outside your door. Tell somebody about the Farmfresh 24/7 app. Find somebody who grows, bakes, and makes in your area. Pull them to the app, buy from them. And if you are not growing, baking, or making yet, consider making a stance somewhere within the food system to add value to it, because it works off reciprocity. That sustainability mechanism works off everybody adding in as we take out. So yeah, man, Farmfresh 24/7. That's my last words. It's action based, man. Get active.
Right on, man. Right on. I appreciate that. And you're right. And active can mean a lot of different things. I know that some people, I know I said it a couple panels ago, but there's the idea of, we're told to do something. We're told to get active. And one of the first things that people usually go is like, okay, what? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm down to help. I have like a skill set or whatever, but like, how can I apply it? And like, so the idea of getting active is incredibly important. And then that's one of the reasons why I want to offer like the list of options and things like that, to just be like, these are some of the ways, not even all of the ways, but like just to give some people an avenue to kind of discover where they're going to be on this journey for themselves, instead of, because like, don't get me wrong, if I spent a long enough time and like came up with like objectionable jobs that I could just hand out to people, like, oh, you want something to do? Here, do this. Like, that might be some good time spent, but like, I would have to be a really great judge of character. Not saying that I'm not, but like, I'd have to be really good at it to be like, you know what? This is what you would be able to do best. Like, this is what I think, would work for you best. Like, and I really can't do that. Not as well as like the individual themselves can be like, I could probably do pretty good at that. And so like, that's where getting active, it can spur people. It can honestly freeze some of us, and it froze me for quite a few months. And like, these conversations and stuff like that are like little contributions, sure, but like, I still feel in a lot of ways like these are but minuscule drops in the bucket, and I could be doing more. And like, that's kind of a give and take with myself, because like, I don't want to go into overdrive and end up burning out, and then like, y'all don't see me for 6 months. Like, I'm trying to maintain some stability with that as well. But there's, that want to be active. I want to do it all. I want to divest from the billionaire class. I don't want them to get another red cent from me at all, ever. But like, and I'm taking steps to like get off of these systems little by little, but it's not something that I can just like flip a switch. And so being kind to yourself in the journey of like, I want to be active, but like in the right ways, like that's a whole like personal journey, I think. And I feel, let's see, who wants to speak next? I see it, Tony, come on up.
As long as Miranda's not going to yell at me. I'm never going to let you live that down. Just so you know. I'll let this be my final words because I'm out of water and I'm terribly hungry. This happened right in my dinner time. So if you don't mind, I would just like to give an example for everybody that's been here in the chat. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks to everybody in the panel. I freaking love you. And listening to you guys speak, it just does something magical to me. My particular lane in community building, I chose event building. Right. And all of you know me as a middle ground guy, and my strengths fit in event building. And I'm going to walk through who benefits from this. And maybe along those paths, you'll start to hear of other agencies that benefit from community events that maybe you could look into and reach out to. So events like, say, a music festival or the one that we just did, the Sandusky Witches Walk. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. That is just a Halloween themed event that we do in Sandusky, Ohio every year. It was great and it's getting national attention. And I'm pretty sure the Guinness Book of World Records is coming next year because we have the most witches gathered in one place, which is pretty freaking sweet. And so who does this benefit? Okay, so we obviously are a charity event, so we usually pick the seniors or the youth. So it's either Meals on Wheels, things like that, or we're giving to like Reach Our Youth programs or providing internet for the youth center so that kids have places to go do homework after school or, you know, play Roblox or whatever the hell kids are doing these days. This also benefits small businesses though, because we get so many people downtown that those small businesses, the bistros, the shops, the bars, tattoo parlors, like everybody is slamming that night. We have people from all over the country now. This is 13 years in the making though. 13 years. It started off as a pub crawl and now it's this. So it took a lot of people before even I joined doing a lot of work. Not to mention the work in the city revitalization, different conversation. Even some of the bigger businesses like credit unions, like when we go to get sponsors, like I'm not as comfortable reaching out to like PNC, Fifth Third, Wells Fargo, some of those. It's like my inner conspiracy theorist is like, oh God, I can't do it. I can't go in there. Anyway, but there are some other big businesses, construction firms, insurance agencies, realtors that they may have a larger broker. I know, but some of the realtors are looking for opportunities to be visible in the community and can help you generate funds for a good cause. Again, chess pieces. Vendors, small vendors, somebody like Lauren, somebody like Miranda, somebody who has handmade clothing, somebody who's doing food products, essential oils, soaps, shampoos, so on and so on and so on. These vendors can have an opportunity, and boy, do they have an opportunity. The arts, music, design. We have people who are doing like design of the event. I want to go even bigger next year. When people arrive at the event, I want them to arrive somewhere, right? Like they get there and they're like, what is this right now? There's thousands of witches walking around and sorcerers and warlocks, and it's all decorated. Who benefits from that? Musicians, painters, your cosplayers who are going to be walking around in like the best costumes that people will come out the woodwork and want to take pictures with them because how the fuck did you make that from shit from Pac-Tans? It's incredible. Like those people benefit too. Now we get in, I got a whole thing here. We get to municipal. That's going to be your mayor, city manager, city council, your commissioners. You go down to your agencies like mental health and addiction services, community foundations. You get to organizations like Kiwanis, Rotary Club, Lions Club. These are all agencies that start to come together and coalesce to make this random spooky day happen, right? And you get down to your citizens as either attendees or volunteers. This builds resilient community. This gets everybody together. And if you are one of the people who can facilitate an event like this, you're going to know all these people. That your net worth is your network, or your network determines your net worth. That's the saying that the Billionaire Hustler Club says. And it's true, though, on so many levels other than capitalism, right? And so by simply doing something that I learned how to do by being a musician, and just making festivals and concerts for people blossomed into this whole other thing that now is like, it's facilitating something that benefits literally everybody, and left and right and everybody in between comes out to participate in stuff like this. So that I know it's long-winded, Miranda, but it's my final words. And it's just literally something like this is a coalescence. Like this is a coalescence of hundreds of powerful people who have varying views, but who are willing to show up to make something cool happen for people. And that's where, if you're a vendor or a facilitator, this is for you. Like, it's for everyone. So when we start thinking macro in a micro way, hyperlocal doesn't just mean me and people who are like me and my buddies who think like me. It can be that if you're an introvert. I won't judge you too harshly, at least not publicly. But we get local and then think as macro as we can be locally. That's my final words, is like, you can plug in some small space, but if you are a boardroom type person who knows how to function in a way like that to unify organizations, get out there. We need people to be magnets for these organizations to bring them together, because when they do, you can make magic happen, literally magic for people. So don't ever skip it. See you later, Lawrence. Phone's down for the count. Now I'll stop. And if anybody ever has any questions about that stuff, my DMs are open. They take me forever to get to, FYI, but community events really are the lifeblood. It's the lifeblood. It is Jubilee, and we need it so desperately. So don't hesitate to get out there and do it if you have the capacity to do so.
Well said, my friend. Very, very well said. And yeah, I'll let that go ahead and be your last words. We'll go ahead and transition into that. Real quick, I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you to every single person sitting in this room, whether they're in this box with me, which of course I'm so grateful to you guys forever and a day, but also all the people who are sitting in this room and just listening and you know, whether this seeped in and inspired you today, which I really hope it does, awesome. If it's something that has got to sit with you for a little while, I do these live panels every other week and have many more discussions planned, so do stick around for those as well. But yeah, thank you for taking the time and sitting with us and having, you know, portions of this conversation with us. It is truly, truly appreciated. I usually go top down for last words. Andrew, are you ready to go with yours?
I love you all. You guys were fantastic. I really enjoyed listening to all of you. I loved being back. You guys are great. Tony, really looked for. I every time you talk, I have such a tremendous wealth of information that I learn. I appreciate it. T, so glad to meet you. What was move with? What was it again? What was your name? What was your name one more time?
I'm MoveWithChange.
MoveWithChange. You were great. I loved everything you said. I was just so glad to meet everybody. Everyone in the chat, thanks for being here with us. It was a blast. I had a good time. I think the main takeaway is we're all on the right track. We're all going to be fine, probably. It's probably going to work out okay if we want it to, which I think we do. So since we do, awesome.
That's right, man. Thank you so much for being here. Deborah, again, thank you for coming up. You did share some very wonderful wisdoms tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, as always. I love your panels, and thank you guys. It's always so much fun chatting with you guys and getting to meet new people as well. Hello, Andrew. Nice to meet you officially. I guess just, I love that we come from all these angles because every angle is important. I always just come from this is where everything is seated. So I think as a closing thought, if you find yourself compelled to be involved in community, listen to what that feels like. Listen to what feels right for you. Follow what your heart wants to do. And if it doesn't fit quite right with certain people, try again, try again, try again, try again. Please don't give up on community, and recognize that it takes two to tango and a whole lot more to tango in community. So be prepared to show up, not just as this is my way and I want it to look like this, or I want the outcome to be like this, or I expect to do just this job, but be willing to show up with curiosity and willingness. When we engage in community, we need to show up with curiosity and willingness, and we need to be ready to take personal responsibility. From there, we can build anything. So thank you guys for putting your hearts and minds into it.
Word. Thank you so very much. Tony, I'm skipping you because you already said your last words. We're going to Miranda next. I'll give you another chance after Miranda.
I'm so sorry, Tony. I was being so direct and I think I'm in that same energy. And I know you're joking with me. But I've got that activator energy that Lawrence was talking about. I'm in action mode, baby. We've been talking. We've seen the cards have been dealt, and it is time to play our hand. And so I'll do when we talk about playing our hand is you are going to be a community activator and a community connector. And maybe you have the capacity and network to do what Tony is doing and create a large scale event. Maybe you can organize within your neighborhood because you have land like Lawrence. Maybe you have cultivated a wonderful online space like MoveWithChange and EmperorAndrew, and even the live panel discussions Tripp has going here. That's activating the community both at the ether and in our local areas. And what you're going to do if you can't do anything at all is invite friends over to do an activity that don't know each other. So maybe you have a group of friends from work and a group of friends from whatever other portion of your life. Bring them into your home, share a meal, build your tables to be longer and wider. That is how we activate our community. And if you're not ready to commit to food, maybe it's a cup of tea, maybe it's an art activity. I like to cook, so for me, it's bringing people in my home that don't know each other, and now we're building connection.
Very well said. Thank you so much for that. And say it's actionable and it's stirring. Go ahead, Tony. I know you have more words to say. You always do. Go ahead. And thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
I already said my piece with it. It's just that, again, like when people start getting concerned, I have right-leaning friends who get concerned with this conversation. I have left-leaning friends who get concerned with the conversation. But again, the pieces are what they are. They're on the board. We are where we are. And unless we want to shake the snow globe, again, don't recommend. There is a peaceful transition where we just start fortifying and shoring up our local communities, right? Like as somebody who for 2 decades was in the big P politics space. Like I wanted to go be a lawyer for the United Nations and work for the ICJ. Like that was my career path before I dropped out and joined a band, which turned out to be a far more interesting lifestyle. So like I wanted to affect change and it takes a long time. And there's people, good people who are grinding in the bureaucracy every single fucking day who don't get the recognition they deserve because the system is what it is, man. And it's not just the system. There's multiple systems working like cogs now to create the geopolitical and national situation we find ourselves in. However, if we don't have the gumption and the tenacity to make it through such a long, rigorous, and brutal interpersonal space, such as big P and geopolitical politics and even state level politics to a degree, then this space is where most of us can find a home and feel like we are participating in a level of activism that can have a meaningful and direct impact on people's lives. You literally see the light in people's eyes when you're doing it right. That's magic. And I just, again, after decades of trying to help people heal the big P politics stuff, I had to sort of take a few steps back. I still talk about it, obviously, on my channel. But at the end of the day, this local stuff is where it's at. And I went and lived it, and I live it now. And I'm telling you guys that it's a much more meaningful, directly meaningful space that can help you heal whatever predispositions you might have against certain groups of people. And that's where it happens.
Well said. As always, my friend, thank you so much for it. One last time, thank you guys for being here as panelists, devoting a couple of hours of your time, your thoughts, your energy, all of the things that you gave to this space is so appreciated, that you all do it every time. And I just appreciate it. And now we're going to say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I'm incredibly appreciative of just how amazing people decide to show up, for these panels and then turn around and show up in their own lives. I'm hoping that somebody, maybe a couple people in the chat were truly inspired to maybe look at things a different way tomorrow. And that for me means ultimate success. So I wanted to just say thank you guys so much for sitting with me and the panelists that I had. Until next time, be well, fellow citizens. Truly, thanks for being here.